Hey, what up, guys? Welcome back to Think Shank. It has been a minute. This is where we tackle questions about sports that aren't raised or explored enough as far as we can tell. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at ThinkShank. You can email us at thethinkshank@gmail.com. I'm Skyler Reinhardt, your personal NBA junkie, philosopher, and tour guide. You can find me on Twitter at ReinhardtSkyler. That's ReinhardtSkyler. Please God, no A's. And you can find me on Instagram at Skyler Sam Reinhardt. And today, we're back to doing it for clout. I really appreciate all the love for a bunch of the content. I know it's been an avalanche of stuff. It turns out time is a flat circle, but it rotates and flies around very, very fast. So we are looking at 17-ish more games left in the regular season, which really isn't that much. The actual playoffs will begin on 4/20. I don't know what you have planned, but just want to put out a PSA. Some really insanely entertaining basketball will be starting then. And then today, I want to talk about the Western Conference Grand Prix, I'm calling it, because virtually every single day, it feels more and more like Mario Kart, and one slip of the banana peel will have super serious, grave implications. I'm looking at you, J-Dub and Steph, for your really unfortunate timed injuries, but we'll get into that. So briefly touch on the status of the top teams, some of the biggest matchups in the past week and a half or so. Without further ado, let's think Shank. Sweet. So where I want to start is Minnesota. I know I touched briefly at the end of last week on Ant's Ascension game. Again, probably the greatest game I have seen the young superstar play. It was wonderful. Since then, they have continued the momentum, sustained it, and just more and more seem like starved junkyard dogs. And I just think it's incredible, and it's actually making me want to support them more and more. There's one specific game I want to double click on. That was their game against the Clippers a couple nights ago now. Like I said, time's a flat circle, but that game had a ton of serious implications. Obviously, the Indiana game was great, top defense versus top offense. The Clippers, they were, at least at the time, only a few games back behind Minnesota in the standings. Obviously, again, the top 1 through 4 seeds, they are in kind of their own echelon. Karl Anthony Towns, again, their second best offensive weapon, 6'10", stretch, power forward, center. He had a meniscus tear and will be reevaluated in about 4 weeks. That puts it really close to the start of the playoffs, and again, reevaluated is not the same thing as return. So it's time for the Ant Show. Okay, number one, the what. So what actually ended up happening? Well, the Timberwolves actually blew out the Clippers on the road in LA, and it virtually ended at the end of the second quarter when the Wolves went on a 20-6 run at the end of the first half at halftime. It was still like the Wolves down by a little under 10, but all of the wind had been sucked out of the sails of the Clippers, and fortunately Kawhi Leonard had to not only leave the game but the arena after the first quarter. It was reported afterward that he was experiencing back spasms. I guess just had to go get a second opinion right away. So you notice in the second quarter itself, that's when that huge run came. For Minnesota, what are the takeaways? Number one, lineup discovery. That huge run that virtually ended the game in the second quarter was done with Jordan McLaughlin, J-Mac, Anthony Edwards, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, TJ Warren, and Gobert. Number one, quickly, TJ Warren signed I believe it was a 10-day contract or something, the day after Cat went out. If you don't remember, TJ Warren averaged 40 points for a few series in the bubble and was never heard from again. It was really jarring to see him on the court again, but hey, I'm always here for a fun redemption story. But there's one specific guy in that lineup that I just want to call out quickly. As I've been saying this entire run of this podcast and season so far, is that there is a very real ceiling of Anthony Edwards' offensive production with all of his gifts and whatnot. I think with his experience and again with the lack of help around him, that really, really caps the offensive potency of this Minnesota squad. And I've been pointing all of the fingers at Kyle Anderson and Jaden McDaniels as the culprits here. It is not very fun if you're Anthony Edwards and the lane is already clogged with Gobert, a very non-shooting big already, but then you also have those two guys who won't shoot either. So even if I can get around my guy, there is no space or room to do anything. Nickeil Alexander-Walker is who I want to talk about. He is top 3 most exciting players to me, and also just favorite players right now. This sort of archetype of the 6'6" to 6'7", very hyper-athletic guard who has some offensive juice, can be somewhat of a secondary playmaker, knock down open shots, things like that, as well as guard up. As far as defense goes, very feisty. Alexander Walker has made his brand this season as being he is very long, just like Jaden McDaniels, similar mold there. Fighting over screens, very physical, very heady sort of defensive player. But in this game, put up 28 points, 3 rebounds, went 9 for 10 field goals, 5 for 6 from 3, and 5 for 6 from the free throw line. So 2 things I want to call out there, and they're not even about the 28 points. Well, I guess 2.5. So the half thing I will say about 28 points is if everybody's focused on your star players and you're not a star player on your team, that is what you should be doing, okay? This is like doing your job, and I'm looking at you, Michael Porter Jr., Grayson Allen. This is how it works is you're going to have the easiest offensive experience of your life. It is up to you whether or not you want to hit open shots, okay? So that is the half thing. First actual thing, 9 of 10 field goals. So similar, I guess, to that first take is 1, great look for Alexander Walker. Love to see it. But 2, that is how much these teams are playing onto Anthony Edwards as the only offensive weapon that they have. I don't want to, poo-poo on the Walker. That is how open these other dudes are on Minnesota. So Kyle and Jaden, take a look at what happens, okay? You could do that. You could at least go like 5 for 7, 7 for 9, Holy crap. The second thing is the 5 for 6 free throws. I don't have the numbers on this, but the eye test on the Wolves is Anthony Edwards, to me, is like the only guy on this team who can manufacture points from the free throw line. Not saying you have to be Jimmy Butler, but guys, if you're not going to take shots and you're not going to hit that many shots, you got to get to the line. This needs to be discussed and talked about as a skill that shouldn't just be reserved for star players, is being able to manufacture free throws. Okay? You don't have to be De'Aaron Fox. You don't have to be Jimmy Butler. If you have that much of a size advantage on another team, you should be outstripping and outweighing your opponent at the free throw line a lot. I'm looking at you, Lakers. Everybody freaks out about those. They're huge. And that is also what's predicated for their game to work. I don't understand why Minnesota, much like the Lakers, aren't really touting that and honing that. Okay. Alexander Walker is a little bit smaller, but if you have somehow found yourself watching any Pelicans games, Herb Jones is their best wing defender. He's probably going to be all defense. He's more of in that OG Anunoby space where they're like at that 6'8", 6'9", like they can actually play up like 2 through 5, basically. Alexander Walker can't, but that is the kind of mold I would be gunning towards. I think of him as kind of that diet Jaden McDaniels, Herb Jones kind of mold. But Jaden McDaniels has absolutely no offense. So that is why I say Herb Jones. All right, next. Ant doesn't have to be Hercules on offense without Towns. Related one, I guess a ribbon on the earlier part. Conley also had a great game shooting from the outside. And it's just like so crazy to me how much more confident I feel about this team when both Conley and one of the others can actually get an offensive rhythm going. I say all this saying Anthony still had 37, 8 and 4, and he went 15 of 29 from the floor. I don't love the 29 field goal attempts also. I mean, again, I know we're down on some weapons here, but that's a lot of shots. Granted, going 15 for 29 when you are being played like you're the only person on your team that can shoot the ball, that is very impressive, but I'd love to get that closer to 20. Next, what does that unlock though? Ant's on-ball defense, which might be the Wolves' biggest spark plug. So there was a series of 3 plays I just want to call out really quickly. In the third quarter, again, Kawhi had to leave. He left the entire arena, so then it became Paul George, James Harden, right? We all know what's going to happen then. PG dialed in his Jaylen Brown tendencies, which, side note, that is such a thing. Every time I see Paul George kind of mess up, my brain just thinks of Jaylen Brown. They both just don't seem to know. They forget how to dribble randomly. First play was Nickeil Alexander Walker, who else, took an offensive charge on PG. to keep the momentum going into the third quarter. Got the call, so PG's, in his feelings, in his head. The next play down, Anthony Edwards was so locked in on his one-on-one matchup with Paul George, right? If you remember when LeBron played Kobe for the last time, and I forget where it was, but LeBron's like smacking the floor and shit. Obviously, everybody understands the context. It was basically that, and the crowd in Los Angeles were audibly oohing and cheering for Anthony Edwards against their own guy, Paul George, because the kid was like very, very similar, like wide stance. It felt like a fucking combine. Like the dude wasn't even on a team yet and he needed to do this or else his mom's mortgage wasn't getting paid. And again, you heard on the broadcast of a road game that the crowd is like, lock his shit up, and he did. So he locked up Paul George so hard that he coughed up the ball, and of course is one of the fastest players in the league, so got an uncontested layup on the other side. And then the next offensive possession, Ant just takes it and skips into the easiest, smoothest, like pull-up jumper, a couple steps inside of the arc. And so you just had like a 6.5 point swing in the span of a minute, and it felt like peak Minnesota. So talk about taking the air out of the other team's sails. When you get the other team's best player in one, foul trouble, but two, like a bad pissed off headspace like that, with like just outward defensive tenacity, like that's just defensive juice, man. And so that's why I said Ant's on-ball defense might be the Wolves' biggest spark plug, because when you're able to get the opposing team's fans to audibly cheer for you against their best guy and then proceed to like convert great defensive plays into offense, it's like, all right, let's go. Like that was amazing. So I just want to call that out. And can play pretty good point of attack defense, and the kid is really hungry for blood. Next one, beware the big man health. So Nas comes into the first quarter, and in one of the first possessions, rolls his ankle. Very, very scary. They can't afford any more injuries. So he goes right back into the locker room, ends up only playing 6 minutes in the whole first half, comes back in the second half, does not seem 100% whatsoever, but still finishes like 20 or so minutes. And, it wasn't amazing, but that was a thing. So they really can't afford any more injuries. But then more interesting / concerning is with about 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter in the game, Rudy Gobert goes up for a kind of drive finish thing at the basket, and he ends up falling very, very awkwardly, gets up and starts like clutching at his like lower kind of chest basically, and he's like walking around in circles, holding it. Kind of looked to me like he just got the wind knocked out of him, but I don't really know. He just walked into the locker room after that, like just escorted out. His hand did not leave his chest, and it like, again, was not awesome. I'll say it again, the Timberwolves literally cannot afford a single other injury to virtually anybody in their top 9. So, great. Last thing I want to touch on is the small ball lineup with Naz Reid for this team. This was one of the first times I saw it employed, or at least attempted to be employed, in a meaningful competitive game. And one of the things I noticed when I just took a look at the numbers and I listened to some of the commentary on Twitter, there hasn't been a ton of offensive success with Naz Reid at the 5. You might think to yourself, that's kind of weird, considering Naz is shooting 42% from 3, basically a stretch 5 at that point. Wouldn't that open up more space for Ant to get to the basket? You know what I mean? So there are two specific things. Number one is that, yes, while Reid can space the floor and open things up for his teammates, they just don't offensive rebound. It's not rocket science. If you bring your center away from the basket, you're just not going to offensive rebound as much. And hey, don't you know, the Wolves suck on offense. So they're going to miss a lot of shots. So a lot of Rudy Gobert's job is to get offensive rebounds and defensive rebounds, whatever. So therefore, much like the Knicks, and as I've been saying all year, Minnesota is the Knicks of the Western Conference. The Knicks, they schematically invest and own offensive rebounding. They have decided, and Coach Tibbs has decided, we need to win the possession war to stand a chance at winning. It's why we have Josh Hart. It's why we all crash the boards, okay? When you have Naz Reid, again, all the way out there, granted, he is very athletic for his size. He's not swooping in there like Jalen Johnson on Atlanta or whatever. He's not like that. The second one is their foul rate spikes really high. And I think personally, that is a chicken or the egg type of thing where Nas playing small ball 5 in the first place just hasn't really been done that much. Chris Finch has been very, very intentional and clear about what he wants his starting closing 5s to be and which lineups to play in the most minutes. So I say that to say, I think Naz Reid isn't that used to guarding 5s. If you don't have him guard 5s more, how is he supposed to get better at guarding 5s? And therefore, it's a spiral cyclical thing. So I just kind of put it to that. So those are your two big reasons. Number one, they don't offensive rebound as much, and they foul a lot more with Reid as the small ball 5. Cool. Hi. All right. So next is Oklahoma City. I just want to touch on J-Dub's ankle injury. So he went down, and unfortunately, I think it was Sunday, I want to say. First of all, Oklahoma City's been shockingly durable, even with them all being 16 years old, so they can't really get injured anyway. Bound to happen, relatively unfortunate timing, but again, Oklahoma City, much like Boston, they're just in Denver. They're just systems, AI, algorithmic machine people. So it sucks, but whatever. They end up coughing it up, to Indiana. I don't know what's good with that Shea stat padding thing. Also, that is not a good look at all, my friend. You have such a pure brand and reputation right now. I would not fuck it up if I were you. Just my 2 cents. Don't at least make it look better than that. That was some of the most blatant stat padding I've seen. But yeah, they lose to Indiana. Of course, Indiana loves it, but I think J-Dub's going to be back. If not this weekend, then next week. So I wouldn't be too worried about that. But I just want to call that out. Two different kind of storylines or stories. Number one, depending on how far Oklahoma City goes in the postseason, it's just going to be the biggest stress test to the prove it to me in the playoffs crutch ever. If you listen to sports podcasts, or even if you just inadvertently see some random stuff on your timeline, and if you've been a Think Shank truther for, I don't even know, I don't even have that many episodes out, whatever, the last month or so, you'll know that I think it's really disappointing and kind of reductive, and like you're not doing your job really well if you always fall back on just simply saying, prove it to me in the playoffs, prove it to, like that's implied, first of all, like you're not really doing anything insightful. Like I don't know who pays you, but that's not very interesting. Secondly, I think that Oklahoma City is going to put some of that to bed. They're going to go really far and they're going to do really well. And all of these old heads that are like, you can't win unless you go through the mud and you're not experiencing. Okay. All right, let's fucking see. That whole crutch of like, I'm not going to actually analyze any numbers or really take this team seriously. All right, let's dance. Okay. I think that, like I said, the biggest stress test for that, maybe ever. But regardless of the outcome, they're going to be around forever. So they're all, again, 16 years old. So, we'll see. Last thing I want to touch on quickly is the Rookie of the Year thing. This has been talked about to death, and I think, again, a thing I just haven't heard said enough. Chet Holmgren, the starting 5 for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Victor Wembanyama, number 1 pick this past year, coming over from France. He's 7'4", basically an enormously sized guard. He's really good. One, obviously, both guys are really, really good. But two, the context and landscapes that they entered the league into could not be more different. And you saw this in the beginning of the year where people were like, yeah, Wembanyama's putting up better numbers, but his efficiency is worse. And then Chet is on like the second best team in the NBA, not even in the NBA, at least as regular season goes. So yeah, his efficiency is going to be better, but his overall production is going to be lower. Since New Year's, Wembanyama has flipped the entire script on its head. He's been unbelievable, getting just better and better and better. Both, obviously, he's a top, I would say personally he's a top 25 player in the league. I think that that's fair. Defensively, I don't really know how many other guys I would really, really take. Obviously, in the playoffs, you just kind of need experience in certain areas to just be good. So, it is what it is. But This is my point here about that entire debate. And I'm going to talk on Chet and Wemby as if I'm in their heads and I know how they think. Ready? Here it is. Very simple. Go ahead and ask Wemby how happy he'll be when he wins Rookie of the Year, but then has to watch Chet be a foundational player on a contending team after the regular season. When Wemby's team clocks out at 13 wins and Chet, again, is the third most important player on a potential title team. Who the fuck is going to care more about the Rookie of the Year then? So that is just the first thing. I just keep coming back to that, is like, this whole debate is stupid. We all know which one of those scenarios both guys would prefer. Yeah, Rookie of the Year, amazing. You know what else would be amazing? Getting to the finals as a rookie, with or without the Rookie of the Year. What are we talking about? Who cares? Dude, Chet's going to go up against Jokic in the conference finals, and Wemby's going to have his dick in his hand. In the other hand is going to be the Rookie of the Year award. Good work. All right, that's it. Next, Denver. All right, so they had a historic game against Boston. Oh, man, earlier this week? I have no idea when that was, but I just want to burn through some of my big takeaways and takes coming off of that. Denver came out on top, and it ended up being pretty close, like very close, honestly, towards the end of the game. I did my reaction video, but overall, I mean, I think the fact that that game ended up very close said more about Denver making mistakes and Boston doing really well. Like, that game should have been a 15-point, honestly, blowout, not going to lie, by Denver. But number one, Denver is the best crunch time execution on both sides of the basketball. They have the best player on the planet in Nikola Jokic. When it comes to offense, it's like playing against Patrick Mahomes. You can basically write in pen that they're going to score, whenever they have the ball. So how do you beat a team like that? Well, you have to have the best upside of Josh Allen to stand a chance, a.k.a. you have to outscore them, right? Which is really weird to say when you think about, oh, well, they're going to score anyway. Yeah, okay. I mean, obviously the numbers game, but like, think about it. You're really not going to stop them. Obviously, they're going to miss some shots. The only chance you have is to somehow outscore them. Another takeaway I had was Peyton Watson. He is I want to say first year from UCLA. Shout out Jaime Jaquez. And they actually played the other night. Fun fact, Peyton Watson and Jaime were literally teammates, and they play each other in the NBA, and they're like two of the most talked about kind of rookies. It's really funny. But that was really cool. Watson is one of the best defensive guards I've seen, specifically at a young age. He's very long. He's like 6'7", 6'8". Offense, it's coming and going, but he stuffed Derek White from behind, gave Derek White his own medicine. I think he might have gotten a couple blocks, actually, now that I think about it, but very good on the defensive end. Keep your eyes peeled for him. Also, Embiid and the 76ers did not want that smoke, and they are not even in the same solar system as either of these teams, and so Embiid backing out in the last second back in Rivals Week in January, that basically had me starting this entire podcast, was that no-show, right? That was probably a good call, Joel. You would have got your ass whooped, bruh. That would have been awful. And then you would have not had enough games to get to the MVP, and everyone would have been like, yeah, you don't deserve it because you lost by 35 to Jokic. So there you go. Other things. One, Michael Porter Jr. tied with Grayson Allen for the biggest benefactor of teammate gravity in the league. So I am creating and pioneering a brand new award. It is called the Biggest Leech of Teammate Gravity. And right now we have a two-way tie between Michael Porter Jr. and Grayson Allen. They're having incredible seasons, all-time production. This is what you should be doing. I hate to be the guy to do this, but I don't understand how you can be so streaky alongside of the greatest player in the sport, MPJ, and be 6'10" and be this streaky. If you tune into a Denver game, especially on the Denver broadcast, you will hear quite an earful about, man, Michael Porter Jr., he's really stepping up this season. He fucking better be, dude. What are we talking about? You're 6'10". You're getting the best assists of anybody else in the league. Oh, and also you're 6'10", and you've been like just shooting threes, whatever. So Grayson Allen is a little bit different, I think, because his game has actually expanded. Like you don't see Michael Porter Jr. putting the ball on the floor, actually self-creating, doing great extra passing. No, Michael Porter Jr. is literally just deciding to hit the same shots he's always gotten. He has not grown or expanded his game. He is just making more shots of the old diet of shots that he's always had. Grayson Allen, on the other hand, he has literally gotten better every single season and virtually by the month. Look at that dude play. Can finish around the basket, can play make going downhill, attacking closeouts, extra passing. Like he's actually expanded his game. So I think I would have to put Michael Porter Jr. ahead of Grayson Allen. I actually have to say that. So there you go. New award. You're welcome. This is just a brain dump, and I have no idea how I'm going to structure, this podcast going forward, but this is just how I'm going to do it right now. There was a new Sam Adams commercial with Derek White that was, one, hilarious. Good work for their marketing team and whoever actually did that. Retweeted on my Twitter. I would go check it out. It's really funny. I just replied to the comment or whatever, and I was like, it's so funny how Coloradian, I don't even know. I think I had to look this up. I'm pretty sure it's Coloradian. Derek White is, in that he didn't, every single part of the whole the Boston part of whatever the commercial was, looks super foreign to him. Derek White's from somewhere in Colorado, went to Boulder or Colorado State, one or the other. I can't remember, but he went to school in Colorado, grew up in Colorado, looked very out of place. And then I was thinking, what if Derek White came to Denver? And I know that the Celtics have quite a bit of looming monetary questions. And granted, if they win the title this year, I'm sure it's going to be all daisies and rainbows and people are going to get money, get paid. And whoever the Illuminati owner of the Celtics is, I don't even remember. I'm sure he'll be okay because, you probably, repeat or something. I just thought that was a crazy concept I just never thought of. And these are the kinds of intellectual just thought experiments that really keep me going. And if we had Derek White alongside of Jokic, I don't know if there would ever be an end to the dynasty apart from Jokic selling his entire stock in the NBA to run for president of Serbia. Aside from that, I think if you put Derek White, even if it costs you Michael Porter Jr., straight up, do a 1-for-1. I don't know. I didn't even go in the trade machine, but I just love the fit, and I have never thought about that before, and now you have. Bring Derek White home to Denver, baby, or to Colorado. Yes, sir. All right, now you've heard that. Last thing I want to say is about Jokic's downstream impact on the other guys on the Denver roster. So they played Miami last night, and there were a couple very interesting things to me that were a little unorthodox for Coach Mike Malone. Aaron Gordon played without Jokic. Dude, that alone, full stop, barely ever happens. The two of those guys, I don't know how this isn't talked about more, they almost always play every single moment with each other. But how Aaron Gordon played was very interesting to me. Dude, he is a really good passer now, and talk about Derek White in basically the same way. Obviously, AG is mobile, and he's great at slashing, and he just has tremendous awareness. And just Jokic's whole kind of space and the passing and all this stuff, I guess I just hadn't seen the opportunity for how much of an impact and how much of that has really spilled off onto the other team. So Aaron Gordon was kind of a quasi-hub on that lineup. You'll notice with Denver, much like Sacramento, Jamal Murray is the point guard, but he really doesn't play make a ton. He is closer to Steph Curry and Draymond, where is Steph a point guard? He guards the other team's point guards, right? Same as Jamal, but think about it. Who is actually getting a lot of the assists and generating Draymond Green is. Nikola Jokic is, Domantas Sabonis is, right? So I say that to say Aaron Gordon was kind of driving the offense a little bit. And it was really cool to see. I don't know. It made me think a lot about utilizing different players. And so he was doing his thing with moving and slashing and all of those things, but getting Watson and Christian Brown involved and all of those, it was really, really cool. I just hadn't thought about Jokic's impact on other players as something that could happen and what it could look like. And who knows, maybe it'll rub off on Peyton Watson too. We can hope. So things to keep in mind. Awesome. So last is the Los Angeles Clippers. I already touched on the biggest headline, which is that Kawhi had to leave after the first quarter of their game against Minnesota due to back spasms. And he not only left the game, but left the arena. And even on the broadcast, they were talking like, that never happens. That sounds very serious. And they showed footage of him walking out of the hallway, whatever. So hopefully he is okay, and we will see about that. But the other thing that I just want to call out from them was that they just looked super flat, obviously, even without Kawhi, and not to be outdone without Russell Westbrook. Like, another thing very similar to free throws with me is juice, especially defensive juice. Obviously, Russell Westbrook brings that, and that is a huge, huge part of their kind of dominance and package. But I just think the Clippers need Russell Westbrook more than anybody gives him credit for or them credit for. In that Minnesota game, you saw Bones Highland coming in for Russ, taking ISO step back threes at the end to try to get them back in the game. Do not want that. Do not need that. He is clearly a score-first guard and does very little playmaking, although maybe to his defense. It doesn't even seem like he gets enough minutes to begin with to even know how to play with anybody. And to Russ's credit, he is usually just so durable, both as far as the actual playmaking component. What does Russ produce? He's actually a very effective playmaker, and he's hyper athletic. Of course, his rebounding has always been great. But after him, I mean, man, like it looked very bleak with Bones trying to lead the charge there. So something to keep in mind. I want to bring up what I am dubbing the Nesmith archetype. So what does that mean? If you don't know about Aaron Nesmith, he is the starting small forward on the Indiana Pacers, and I had my eye on him for months now. He is now, to me, an entire archetype in and of himself. And I think it's very important. And I just think it's time to call out what that archetype offers now that I'm seeing a trend here in other teams as well for filling the void that he has filled for Indiana. So what does it mean? Aaron Nesmith is about 6'6", 215 pounds, usually a bit undersized when it comes to guarding your smaller forwards or power forwards. This is how I define it. They are bigger guards that can guard up while still posing offensive threats. Usually very heady, so great awareness, specifically on defense, great physicality, very fearless in terms of being switched onto bigger, guys to defend. They don't force things on offense, meaning they don't try to self-create too much or overplay whatever their role is. They actually can hit open looks. If you think back to guys like Matisse Thybulle way back when, great defensive player, but absolutely no offense. Also looking at you, Vanderbilt and Jaden McDaniels. They can also attack closeouts with good awareness, do some secondary playmaking. Guys that I just want to call out that fit this mold. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, called out earlier. Alex Caruso, everybody knows. Aaron Wiggins on Oklahoma City. He doesn't get that many minutes because Oklahoma City is so stacked as far as what they have for their system, but he's another guy. He can actually get himself to the free throw line, pretty fearless, going to the basket, can guard up, guard down, that kind of stuff. And then last but not least, coming to light as of last night in a resounding season tie-breaking, actually season shutout, loss for the Los Angeles Lakers. The Sacramento Kings, baby, absolutely annihilated the Lakers. And boy, oh boy, my guy, it is time for Keon Ellis to take his righteous throne as a starter on this team. He got some minutes earlier in the season. You probably didn't see, but in about mid to early January, the Kings finally offered him, I believe, a 3-year deal. Member of the actual roster, undrafted out of Alabama. Exact same mold, a lot lighter than Nesmith. He's about 6'6", 195. This is why these guys matter. They give what high-octane offenses need, and that's defensive juice. You think about the Sacramento Kings, I put out my entire breakdown of them, and literally, I made that whole breakdown and landed on the exact void that Keon Ellis has provided and filled in the last 2 games he has started, and that is defensive juice. The Kings specifically have not had any degree of pride in any player when it came to the defensive end. You had a lot of offensive-leaning players, and that's okay. That's a bet that you make, right? Is we're going to outscore you, and that's how it's going to go. And you can see the similarities with Indiana, right? They're the best offense in the league, pace and space. Everybody shoot, everybody run, keep running, don't stop running, everybody run. You need somebody who is going to take pride and ownership of bringing defensive presence, physicality, all of those things with those high-octane offenses. Keon Ellis is the most recent great standout example of that exact archetype. So 6'6", bigger guard, has guard skills, doesn't force things on offense, but takes pride in defense. Keon had 3 steals, 1 block on a very, very much bigger Lakers team, and you felt his presence every time the Lakers tried to make a run in this game. It was a heady, handsy, physical steal or deflection by Ellis, and there's nothing you can do about that. You know, you think back, I mean, I know I said Aaron Wiggins on Oklahoma City. You could almost say that about every single player on their roster, right? Virtually, except for Chet, I guess. But this archetype is just something that I'm seeing emerge more and more, again, with really, really great offenses. Same thing with Derek White. He should be in this list as well. Like, you know what I mean? Can play up, but also help on offense. The other thing I want to say as well is the last wall, the fourth wall, whatever, is if they're fearless enough to draw fouls. I just think that's amazing. Ellis only got to the line, I think, twice last night. But, I mean, even that is great. And Alexander Walker did the same thing. And Caruso doesn't really. He's a little bit less inviting of the physical stuff. Obviously, he's had injuries. But keep your eyes out for that spot on a lot of these potent offenses, especially if they do a lot of movement, a lot of pace and space. I say that at the contrast of everybody's talking about Herb Jones right now, and they're all defensive teams. This is not a knock on Herb Jones, but he is in that Jaden McDaniels, Jared Vanderbilt mold of 6'8", 6'9". They're going to do mostly your 3 through 5s. Wouldn't necessarily want them trying to guard, I don't know, all of the 2s and everything. Like, you're probably going to prefer to put them on a 4, for example. But, man, these heady small forwards, man. Even Nemhard on Indiana too. Like, they're just good. They can switch on everybody. J-Dub, of course. Like, I just want to call that out. After seeing Ellis last night and all the pub he's gonna get, like, this is a real thing, and these guys really stir the drink for their team. So that is it for today, guys. Hopefully that was exciting, insightful, and we will talk soon. Until next time.